see the other one? அங்கே டபுள் கிளிக் பண்ணால் அது சென்ட்ரலில் வர. ஓகே, என்னாச்சு? Hari Om. Let's start with the prayer. Samasta jana kalyane niratam karunamayam namami chinmayam devam sadgurum brahma vidvaram vasudeva sutam devam kamsachanuramardanam devaki paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Amadeva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Gurudeva Deva. Hari Om. Today we were discussing the nature of knowledge and why Vedanta is a science. Because a lot of people have a misunderstanding. The science means only objective analysis, which can be established by some proofs, but proofs itself depends upon the data, and data has to be collected by what you call perceptual data, directly or indirectly. Therefore, it appears that from the objective science point, only that can be objectified, which is independent of, supposedly independent of a subject, is a science. And everything else doesn't come under a science because it's subjective. But very interesting aspect of this objective science is that the more you try to know, the more it reveals. In a sense, in any field, there is no finality that I have understood the subject. In any field, the more you investigate, the more it opens, in a sense that what you don't know is growing faster than what you know. In the sense that your ignorance is increasing faster than your knowledge, and that's why you become humble. And you become more and more specialization of a narrower and narrower field in any objective field. In any scientific paper, if you look at it, he will start trying to say, I want to analyze and understand, but in the end of the paper, he will ask more questions, and obviously he needs more money to investigate. So no so-called objective analysis will give you the final answer of this is the solution. This is true even so-called what are the fundamental particles, and they are trying to find out what is the most fundamental, and this keep going on and on. But what important is, in all these sciences, you are using the objective analysis to understand the objective tools, and that which is not objectifiable cannot be understood by using objective tools. Therefore, there is a limitation, inherent limitation in terms of the objective sciences itself. This we have to understand. So a scientist cannot prove whether there is something which is subjective but cannot be understood or analyzed using objective tools. We give simple examples like, is there a mind, or is there a thought, or how do I analyze a thought, or how do I objectify a thought? Only if one who knows what he is thinking knows what exactly is the thought, and no one else can know what the thought is or what these other people's thoughts are. Therefore, they are not amenable for objective tools. Therefore, we have theories and inferences and all other things which are so-called subjective, but at the same time they cannot be analyzed using objective tools. And the same way, is there a soul? Is there a life? So what exactly is the life? We understood that there are living beings, including the one who is analyzing, including the scientist who is analyzing the objective field. He is a subject He is a conscious entity, but he himself cannot analyze himself because the subject cannot be objectified. He himself doesn't know who he is. He can say, I am this, and all his biodata essentially talks about this, but I am a subject and this is an object. And the very fundamental misunderstanding that I am a subject is same as an object itself, there is some problem there. So therefore, the very scientist who tries to disprove or who tries to say there is no God or something, itself is not able to understand what exactly it means. He himself doesn't know what the subject is. He himself cannot analyze what consciousness is. He is trying to even objectify consciousness, but even very objectification of the consciousness, it becomes an inert but not a conscious entity. This is what in the science we call Schrodinger's cat problem. And we also pointed out another interesting is, without the subject, object cannot be known. So even a scientist has to require to find out what are the fundamental particles. Without a conscious entity present, the unconscious particle cannot be discovered. Now what is that which remains the same in all is objective particles can be changing, but the conscious entity cannot be changing. In other words, I am has to be there in order to discover what is this. And that's why I gave a simple example. When I go to a pitch dark room and question I ask, is there a chair or not? It only comes into a probability only, because it cannot be a deterministic system until a conscious entity enters into the picture. The object chair doesn't say I am there. A subject has to say the chair is there. So presence of the subject is required to establish the existence of an object. Without the consciousness present, without the subject with a conscious entity present, the existence of the object cannot be established. It becomes an only indeterminate problem. It's only probabilities. It becomes only a deterministic once the conscious entity enters into the picture. That's why all objective sciences are limited, and the more I said, the more one analyzes, the more it opens up. Therefore, one can never understand completely any objective field. So one can be only specialist of a smaller and smaller field. Whereas now we are trying to look into a means of knowledge to know what the subject also. So we need to know how to analyze the subject and how to analyze the subject and object relationship, because in any knowledge involves these two. And to know any object, I need also not only subject and an object, I need a means of knowledge. So even though there is a chair in the room, and even though I am there, the operation, the relation between the chair and me has to be established by my eyesight. And for the eyesight itself to function, my eyes should be able to see. That means I should have a vision, that sense of sight should be functioning. In addition to that, there has to be other conducive environmental situations such as light should be there. So for me to see that there is a chair out there, I need to have sufficient light that illumines the chair, and through the light I can say and I can see, and through the eyes I can say that there is a chair. So all my senses have to be functioning for me to establish the world around. The sense of sight, all the things that I see through the eyes, I see forms and colors. The colors and forms are through the eyes. The sounds, ears, I need a sense of hearing. So each sense organ is particularly limited in its field. Eyes cannot hear and the ears cannot see. So therefore each means of knowledge is applicable to particular sense organs. That we call it a pramana. Pramana means a means of knowledge. So I have a subject and I have an object, and I need a means of knowledge to establish how I know the object, which is called prameyam. Prameya means object of knowledge. Prama means knowledge. And I am the knower, that is pramata, and prameyam is an object, and a pramana is a means of knowledge. So pramata is a subject, prameyam is an object, and pramanam is a means of knowledge. So if I want to know anything in the world, I need a pramana. I need a means of knowledge to know. So the Vedanta or the philosophy itself classifies what are the means of knowledge available, even to know myself or the world. Because for me to know, I need to know who am I and what is this world, why I came into this world, what does the life means, what is the purpose of life means, why I should live in this world, and so on. All these things need to be known because I am a living entity trying to gather, as I said, get the happiness out of the world. All my life is only through this process of pravrutti and nivrutti, which I define, where the means of trying to gain something that I like and trying to avoid things that I don't like. So whole life is going through this process, and therefore I should have a clear understanding of I am the subject and who is the subject and what is the object and what's my relationship and how do I know something. So the knowledge becomes important here. Now, in order to analyze it, so I need to know what are the means of knowledge available, and the classification is there are three fundamental means of knowledge, or pramana. Pramana is means of knowledge. So we all know pratyaksha pramana, means direct perceptual knowledge. That is directly I know. I see it, therefore there is a chair there. I don't see, therefore chair is not there. So existence of a chair or absence of its existence also I know through my eyesight. So if I don't see it, then I say it is not there. So this becomes a means of knowledge. So pratyaksha pramana is direct perceptual knowledge that is gathered through the senses, and the senses gather the information about the object and present it to the mind, and the mind synthesizes, called the cognitive process, and in the cognition the object is visualized as a thought in the mind. We'll analyze this a little bit more carefully, but at the outset first we know that there is a pratyaksha pramana, a direct means of knowledge where perceptual knowledge is very direct and immediate, and that through which we can know all the things in the world. So we can use to magnify the capability of eyesight through telescopes and microscopes and all that becomes a part of pratyaksha pramana. Now through pratyaksha pramana I can infer something which I do not see, and that means of knowledge is called anumana pramana. It's a logical deduction based on my observations. So it is the logic which is called anumana pramana, a logical deduction which is inductive or deductive type of logic, where I see some data, from that I infer something which I don't see. And the classical example in philosophy is wherever there is a smoke, there has to be a fire. So I see some distant hill, and I see a hill, and I see smoke there. Now looking at the hill and looking at the smoke, I infer there must be fire there. I do not see fire, but I am inferring fire from what I see. What I am seeing is only smoke. So smoke is direct perceptual data, but now from the knowledge of the smoke, through the pratyaksha pramana, so I am using the technical words, that is direct perceptual knowledge, I am able to know that there is a smoke there and there is a hill there. Now I make an inference that there must be a fire on the distant hill. So how do I get that relationship? How do I say that there should be a fire? I don't say a fire, but why do you say there is a fire? Because in the past I have known that wherever there is a smoke, there has to be a fire. So that is a direct perceptual data that's available in the past. So based on that data, I have established a concomitant relationship between the smoke and the fire. So therefore that relationship is essential for me now to conclude that whenever I see a smoke, there must be a fire. even though I don't see a fire. If I see the fire, I don't need inference. So inference comes into picture. Inference is logical deduction comes into picture when I don't see it, but from what I see, I can deduce something that I don't see. And that is a knowledge. There is a distant fire, there is a fire, is a knowledge now. And the knowledge again is established because of direct perceptual data in the past, which established the relation between the smoke and the fire. So we use a little bit technical words. So this is a drishtanta. There is an example in the past that wherever there is a smoke, there has to be a fire. And just like in the kitchen, they used to do the cooking in the kitchen, they used to have firewood, and wherever there is a fire, there used to be smoke. Therefore, whenever I see a smoke, there is a fire, has been established in the past. So one is the hetu. Hetu means I am seeing something, and another is sadhyam. I am deducing something else that I don't see, based on the relationship between what I see and what I am deducing. That's called vyapti jnanam. Vyapti jnanam means a concomitant relation between what I see and what I am deducing. That has to be established in the past. So based on the particular data that was established, where I have already established the relationship between the hetu, what I am seeing, to sadhya, what I am concluding, I already established a relationship between them, and that's called vyapti jnanam. So from the vyapti jnanam, I can make a logical deduction called anumana pramanam. Pramana means a means of knowledge. Anumana means logical. So logical means of, inferential means of knowledge is established because there is in the past a perceptual data to support it. So what I am deducing now is an inference, and logic can provide you a means of knowledge, provided it is supported by a pratyaksha pramana. So pratyaksha pramana means direct perceptual data becomes a basis even for the inferential knowledge also. So all sciences are based on mostly the anumana pramana, means logical deduction based on the data they gather. They through the perceptual data, they gather the data from which they establish something which they cannot see. And the cause and effect relationship has to be established. And if they deduce some theory, it says this is the cause for this, then somebody has to say, he has to again prove it that in fact that is the cause, because the effects has to be come out for every time that cause is there. So the cause-effect relationship has to be established, and that can come under the logical deduction. So every science wants a proof only because it's based on direct perceptual data as a basis for the science. But that's only objective sciences, and we have mentioned already that subject conscious entity is involved in all objective sciences. And all objective sciences will not give you complete knowledge, because any objective analysis, I mentioned that you become specialization of narrower and narrower, because your ignorance is going more than your knowledge. You will never be knowledgeable of anything. Whereas in Vedanta, in the science that I am mentioning about, it includes both the subject and the object and the relationship, which cannot be handled by any objective analysis. Therefore, Vedanta alone becomes a pramana. This is not a phonetical statement. I am not talking about Vedanta as only a particular scriptures, but I am talking about fundamentally Vedanta means, Veda means knowledge, Anta means ultimate knowledge that includes both the subject and the object and the relationship between the two. And that is the knowledge that can only be gained through proper analysis. And in the case of in the Vedanta, the end part of the Vedas, this aspect has been discussed elaborately. Therefore, we refer to also this knowledge as a Vedanta knowledge, where this scriptural statement is required in order to understand the both object and subject. This is one aspect that we need to know, why Vedanta is a science and the study of Vedanta is required to understand the total knowledge. Now, in one of the Upanishads are where this knowledge is contained, and the Upanishads are the end part of the Vedas, and therefore they are called Vedanta also. And in one of the Upanishads, the student will goes to a teacher and says, "Sir, please teach me that knowledge by which I know everything else." Just now we mentioned that if I know something, I will, in any objective field, I become a narrower specialization of smaller and smaller. I am knowing everything about very small entity or everything about nothing. It's called delta function in mathematics. But here is the case where a student will says, "No, sir, teach me that knowledge, knowing which I know everything." And that's what is being taught in that Upanishad. So in another Upanishad, a teacher will ask, "Do you know that knowledge, knowing which you know everything?" Eka vijnanena sarva vijnanam bhavati. A student comes and says, "I know everything." Says, "Tell me, have you learned that knowledge, knowing which you know everything?" And the student says, "That cannot be possible. If I know chemistry, I won't know biology, I don't know astronomy, I don't know any other subject. Even in chemistry, I am specialization of organic chemistry or particle chemistry, and I don't know anything else much about it. So therefore, how can I know, knowing one, I'll know everything?" And for that only, the scripture starts teaching you how one can know. If I know the cause, the material cause, I know all the effects. And here gave an example of, if I know the gold, I know in essence all the ornaments made up of gold, because the essence of all the ornaments is nothing but the gold. Details of each ornament may be different. The ring may be different. This ring may be different from that ring. The ring may be different from a bangle. Bangle may be different from a necklace. All those details are not substantive knowledge. Substantive means the essential knowledge. What is essential knowledge is its gold. Gold itself in this form. So there is a beautiful example that is given in the scriptures to know that Eka vijnanena sarva vijnanam bhavati. Knowing one thing, you can know all things that are made up of that material. So if I know the material cause, all the effects of that material can be known. Another example it gives is, by knowing the clay, I know all the parts made up of gold. It's nothing but the clay itself in different names and forms. It's the gold itself in names and forms. It is the iron itself in different tools forms. So these are the three examples the scripture itself provides, by which if I know something, I can know everything. And the student goes and says, "Sir, please teach me that knowledge, knowing which I know everything." And teacher teaches that the essential material cause from which the whole universe came, and therefore if I know the material, I know the substantive knowledge of the whole universe itself, because it came from that. So if I know the essence of from which it came, all others are nothing but the products of this essence that is. That's one aspect that is to be understood also. This is a part of Vedanta, where it includes all the objective analysis of the whole objects are nothing but the one that became into many. So if I know one, then I know everything. So therefore, it goes back into the creation theory also. And how do I know all this? I cannot know by any other way, and that's why Vedanta becomes a pramana. Now, the Shastra Pramana says, we said the Pratyaksha Pramana, direct perceptual knowledge, Anumana Pramana, the inferential knowledge, and we call the third means of knowledge called Shabda Pramana. Shabda Pramana means knowing through word of mouth. How do I know? Suppose I am turning the TV on and somebody reporting what's happening in Afghanistan. So I cannot directly see it because it's not a Pratyaksha Pramana. I cannot logically sit down and see from what I see around here, deduce what's happening in the Afghanistan, but I am looking and gaining the knowledge by the reporter saying what's happening there. For me to believe what's happening or to know the knowledge that really or not, I have had to have a faith that the reporter is reporting properly or reporting correct data, so that what I am gaining as a knowledge becomes a valid only if I have the full faith in the words of the reporter. So this we know as the Sabda Pramana, means of knowledge for me to know by through the words of a trustworthy person whom I can trust. So that becomes a knowledge called Shabda Pramana. So we have primarily Pratyaksha Pramana, direct perceptual knowledge, Anumana Pramana, the inferential knowledge, but inferential knowledge again has to be supported by Pratyaksha Pramana, and the third one is a Shabda Pramana through the word of a trustworthy person. Now in this Shabda Pramana, there are two types of things. One is the Laukika and the other is Alaukika. I'm using technical words so that these will be useful as we go along. Laukika is the transactional world related to transactional world. Like example I gave is the Afghanistan. So when the reporter is reporting something, what's happening in the Afghanistan, because of my faith in the reporter, I am gaining the knowledge. But this knowledge, I can go to Afghanistan and confirm whether that is true or not. That means even the Shabda Pramana, I can validate or invalidate by Pratyaksha Pramana, by direct perceptual data, by going there. So therefore, I can establish the validity or non-validity of the trustworthiness of the reporter. Now, there are certain things where I cannot go and establish through Pratyaksha Pramana, or it is not amenable for Pratyaksha Pramana. For example, what I said is the subject, it cannot be analyzed as an object because it is a subject and not an object. I cannot objectify the subject. So I cannot say this is I am. When this is I am, that this becomes an object for me. So the one who is saying this is I am is a subject. So therefore, subject cannot be objectified. Therefore, I cannot use any Pratyaksha Pramana to validate something that is beyond this, what is consciousness and who is the subject, I, the knower. And therefore, I need to rely on something else. Anumana Pramana or logic is also not valid because the logic itself, I mentioned, depends upon the Pratyaksha Pramana for validation. Therefore, neither the Pratyaksha Pramana nor Anumana Pramana are valid or can give me the knowledge of the subject I am and my relationship with the object this is. Now, what other way of doing? Shabda Pramana also, I said, Laukika, the world is the trustworthy, like example I gave is the Afghanistan, where I can establish the validity of the data by going there. So that is in the Laukika, that means in the worldly things, the Shabda Pramana can be validated or invalidated by Pratyaksha Pramana. So Pratyaksha Pramana, that means direct perceptual data, becomes a strong Pramana. Other two becomes a weaker Pramana because they rely one way or the other on the perceptual data. Now, there are certain things which cannot be known by Pratyaksha Pramana, as I said about the subject, and also certain things beyond the perceptual data. What is life? We do not know. Even though we know we are alive, we cannot say or quantify or objectify what life is. All we say is, he is dead and gone. That means there was something else that was there that is making the body alive. At the same time, it's no more there. It has left the body. So death is as though something left the body. And that which cannot see, hey, we didn't see anything leaving the body. How do you say that it left the body? You see, because it's not a Pratyaksha Pramana. I cannot see God because it's not a Pratyaksha Pramana. If I can see God, then God becomes a finite. and finite cannot be a God. So logically also, God cannot be proved or disproved by science. So one has to be very careful. A scientist can neither prove the existence of God nor disprove there is no existence of the God, because the very tools that he is using are not valid for establishing existence or non-existence. So now what are the tools available? We have to use the scriptural phenomena. Then how does the scriptures know? So this is where one has to be careful. So scripture is called Alaukika Pramana. It has deduced based on the inferential data, based on the subject to understanding of the great sages of the yore. So essentially the Vedas are called the Rishis. The Rishis are the scientists of the yore who have pinned down what the knowledge that has been revealed to them. So Vedas are called revelations. In fact, most of the scriptures are called revelations because the authors do not claim that I have discovered it, it's revealed to me. That is true even in science also. Scientists may say, as he is contemplating on this, suddenly the solution strikes and say, I have discovered, I made a breakthrough, he may claim, but so-called breakthrough is nothing but the knowledge came to him because the knowledge is already there. Scientist doesn't invent laws, he only discovers the laws. Discovering is removing the cover. He removes the ignorance, and the knowledge which is there is self-revealing. And the same way scripture becomes a pramana because it is established by sages who have own experienced it and putting down. So there is a self-consistency in all these scriptures, Upanishads, that will tell you that this is indeed is true, because just as all the data has been self-consistently proved by any objective sciences in an objective field, then only it becomes a correct data. In the same way, even in the subjective field or in the total analysis of the subject and object relationship, whatever they have discovered have been re-established by many sages of the yore, and therefore there is called samanvayam. Samanvayam means self-consistency in the teaching itself. So I don't have to reinvent a wheel in order for me to discover. So we use that scripture as a pramana. We don't use anybody else's experience alone as a pramana, because then it becomes subjective. This is well established and documented the scriptural statements, which is analyzed deeply and show that they're all self-consistent and logical too, even though logic itself cannot establish, but it's not illogical. So therefore Shruti is logical, and it also takes into consideration the experience of all beings in order to analyze the system. Therefore scriptures, particularly the Vedanta, becomes a means of knowledge, and one has to know as a knowledge, as a pramana. So we have analyzed the three fundamental pramanas, the Pratyaksha Pramana, Anumana Pramana, and the Sabda Pramana or Shastra Pramana as Alaukikam, that which is beyond the worldly things that I can know only through the scriptures. So study of scriptures become essential for the knowledge, and therefore the student of Vedanta is asked to go to study this from a teacher. With this we'll stop here, and we'll come back and analyze what kind of teacher we need and some more about this Pramana Prameya aspect of it. We'll stop here. We'll do the prayer. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Stapanam. Tapaja.